trade is often reduced to containers and tariffs, but in reality, it may be one of the strongest bridges between two of the world's most consequential democratic actors. India is the world's largest democracy by population. The European Union, meanwhile, stands as the world's largest democratic union. So when India and the EU come together to negotiate a free trade agreement, they are not just exchanging goods, they are shaping the rules, norms, and direction of global trade for decades to come. In a world marked by fragmentation and strategic uncertainty, that makes this partnership far more than a trade deal. I'm Ruchira Kamboj, and this is the Delhi Policy Group. And joining me to decode what's truly at stake is a very distinguished guest, Ambassador V.S. Seshadri, also from the Delhi Policy Group. Welcome. So that leads me now to the first question. What makes the conclusion of the India-EU FTA particularly significant? How much of this is driven by economic compulsions for trade diversification, and how much reflects a changing global environment of geopolitical rivalry and economic fragmentation?
Thank you for having me. I think the India-EU FTA is very significant, both economically and commercially. I would say economically because it's an FTA between the developed economy, that's the European Union, which is also the world's second largest economic entity, and an emerging economy like India, which is the fourth largest economy now. So in that sense, it makes a very, very significant impact, both in terms of bilateral trade, as well as in terms of the impact it will have on the world trade as a whole. Commercially, for India, it is quite significant because EU is our largest trade. Our exports amount to something like $75 billion. Our imports from the EU, $60 billion. So in 2024-25, it amounted to approximately $135 billion. That is in goods. Apart from this, there is also trade in services, which is again quite substantial, amounting to about $70 billion. So if you add up, this is about $210+ billion. It's a significant, therefore, in terms of size.
Absolutely. Yes.
The second aspect that I will try to emphasize is that why has it come about at this point of time? I think both sides were seeking a level playing field for access into the other's market. India, for example, has been looking at EU continuing to stitch up FTAs with a number of other partner countries, which are competitors to India. Like, for example, Vietnam is one example.
Yes.
Most recently, they have signed with Indonesia. They are the largest portfolio holder in terms of FTAs, having 45+ FTAs in their fleet. Now, if we needed a level playing field, we also needed to have market access. We had also needed to have an FTA with them. So that was a growing compulsion on our part. Secondly, earlier EU used to extend GSP concession for us, but that has steadily eroded over a period of time. And from 1st January, that has been totally suspended. So even that little concession GSP was now non-existent. So that made it even more important. From the EU side again, they have also been looking at a level playing field for themselves. Because India has entered into FTA with Japan, with Korea, so on several industrial products, or even ASEAN countries, they were seeing competition. On the other hand, India's tariffs are relatively high. So they were looking at opportunity whereby they could also have a level playing field in the Indian market. So this is, I think, the result of efforts of both sides. But this could have happened earlier. But why did it happen now? I think there is some history to it. So you can say, if you look at the FTA making, uh, Europe from the 2010 decade onwards was going ahead with strongly on FTA making. But it also wanted deep FTAs. It also wanted behind the border policies to be covered significantly, more or less in compliance with EU regulations. This was a difficult issue for us. Likewise, from the Indian side, there were sensitivities on agricultural products, sensitive items, etc., which we were not very keen to put it on the table. Now, what happened during this decade was also that EU was stitching up FTAs with other partners, and it was also businesses were in closer ties with China. It was quite comfortable. This was going on till about 2020 or so. In fact, the high point of their relationship with China, when they wanted consolidation of their business relations, happened December 30, 2020, when they entered into a comprehensive agreement on investment. But soon thereafter, the vulnerabilities of COVID started showing up. And Europe was also getting worried about the wide trade deficits that they were incurring with China, the excess capacities coming there. So you could see thereafter EU looking for diversification. And you started this hearing about de-risking. You started hearing about trustable supply chains. So these conversations moved forward. So both India too at this point of time was looking for such opportunities where it could enter into trusted partnerships, which is why the two sides in 2022 revived the FTA negotiations. And since then, we have seen how they have moved forward very quickly, because precisely what you mentioned, the geopolitical rivalries and the contestation that we see around in terms of trade, investment, etc., which is putting tensions all around. So the two have decided, therefore, to see if they could arrive at a partnership which would be a little safe harbor from what's happening elsewhere.
No, I think those are some very crucial points that you've made: diversification, de risking. But tell me, Ambassador, how should the public understand what this deal represents and its long term benefits for various sectors of the Indian economy?
Now it's a far reaching agreement in terms of market access, because that is the meat of the FTA. That, if you see, you will find that India will now be securing almost, as per the details given out by the two sides, almost 99% of its exports will get freer access into the EU market. And that is because EU will be either eliminating or reducing tariffs on about 97% of the tariff lines.
Yes.
Likewise, EU will also be getting a very substantial access into the Indian market. Apparently, about 97% of their exports will have some concession or the other. And India has promised to reduce tariffs or eliminate on 92.7%. Of course, some are phased out over a period of time. And what is interesting from a trade negotiator point of view is that the two sides have carved out red lines. What are sensitive items for each other? This has taken some time for each side to understand what the other side's red lines are and appreciate it and give them due regard. So that has been a very important aspect. But now you asked about what are the important sectors that will benefit from the agreement. I think this is, as I said, now it gives a level playing field for our exporters, particularly of labor-intensive items like textiles, leather goods and other items, which incidentally have a relatively higher level of duty in the EU market, even as their average tariff is quite low. But these have higher tariffs in the EU market. So this level playing field that we will have with other FTA partners of the EU will provide us, our exporters, significant benefit that they should certainly try to benefit from. Now, there are certain areas like geographical indications, like trade in investment, investment protection. These are two agreements which are currently still under negotiations. My understanding is they also get concluded. The two should be able to consolidate the picture and bring even more benefits to the deal as such. I have not mentioned about trade in services. There, European Union has given access to 144 subsectors. Now, we must understand that in trade in services, there are almost about 160 subsectors in all. Out of 12 sectors, 160 subsectors. EU has provided access in 144 of them. Likewise, India has provided access in 102 of them. So this is again a very, very substantial access, coupled with mobility provisions in terms of movement of professionals, etc. That again brings substantial benefits. So there is much to look forward to and build in terms of our exporters and investors who will be coming in, hopefully, thanks to this. You asked about the public understanding. I think what really comes out is at this stage, if you look at global trade, there are three major players: US, EU, and China, all together contributing about 40% plus of imports of exports. And if you see India's export-import relationship with these partners, with China, it is almost one-sided. Our imports are very significant. The deficit is widening, and our exports, particularly of finished products, are not able to find fair access. And you see tariff turbulence, trade turbulence vis-a-vis our relations with the US, even as there is some relief that now we have arrived at a bilateral trade. So in this context of our relationship with these three trading majors, if we are able to arrive at an agreement that is predictable and provides stability, I think this gives a safe harbor for our overall trade. And I think this is the overall reflection that the public will probably get from this agreement.
Indeed. I agree with you. I think improved access and mobility, they are key highlights of this trade deal. Now, what does this emerging partnership offer both India and Europe that goes beyond traditional market access? And if I may say, what are the guardrails needed to ensure that it delivers sustainably?
Yes, what I mentioned so far mainly relate to market access in terms of reduction of duties and so on. But EU is also regulation here. So there are, if you need to get market access into the European Union, you also need to enable our exporters to be able to deal with those regulatory issues. Now, what the FTA normally does in any FTA is to provide some pathways for those regulatory issues to be stacked. And the India-EU FTA, as I understand, also provides for such pathways. For example, one of the key concerns that we had was on carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Yes.
Particularly because it has come into force with effect from January 1, 2026. And these relate to carbon heavy products like steel, aluminium, fertilizers, etc. And our exports of these items are substantial to the EU. While the FTA does not provide a kind of free movement of those items to be going to the EU despite CBAM. They are trying to ease the compliance through certain processes which have been agreed in the FTA. One of which I understand is that if EU gives a easier dispensation to any other trade partner, they will extend the same thing to India. That is the first part. The second part is they have also put in place a technical cooperation mechanism with some funding of what $500 million, which will provide some assistance to our exporters who are at the process of trying to show that they are complying with the CBAM regulations. Now, this is still in the evolutionary stage in India because even the carbon credit mechanism structures we are still to put in place. So, this technical cooperation program hopefully will assist in those processes coming into place in India. Secondly, it will also help in some verifiers because it's one thing is to comply with it, but another is somebody to verify that it has been complied with. Now that again is important that we have some Indian verifying institutions who are recognized by the EU. I think these two are very important and I think this technical cooperation program will take care of this. Likewise, I understand there are also provisions relating to mobility, for example, where certain processes have to be followed up. There are issues relating to whether Indian IT companies have digital secure status. This is an unresolved issue again, where there will be huge close study or scrutiny between our own digital privacy rules and theirs, how far these processes can help Indian companies to get that data secure status is again something that will need to be followed. There are provisions regarding mutual recognition of qualifications, etc. That again some negotiations have been provided for, which will need to be followed. So there are standards, specific products, etc. So what an FTA normally does, as I said, they are enabling provisions which help exporters in starting these processes. But we need to ensure that they are taken up very actively and pursued. Now, there is also a guardrail in the FTA. This is in the form of rapid response mechanism. In case any party to the FTA has some issues with the manner in which it is being implemented, or there are some hurdles that their exporters are facing. This is a three-tiered mechanism, one at the joint committee level, next it goes to senior officials level, then at the ministerial level. The manner in which it is being framed, rapid response mechanism, indicates that it is intended to act as a quick fix rather than let delay matters.
It gives a sense of urgency also.
So that is again a very, very useful instrument that is there. And I would say there are also very good opportunities that the FTA provides in terms of forging cooperation on supply chains, as well as on industrial cooperation in a wide range of areas. Because let us recall that along with the FTA, the two sides have also exchanged a strategic agenda program for 5 years, which cover all these issues, including critical minerals, energy transition, advanced technologies. There are very detailed provisions which have been mentioned. So, FTA is a tool which can be used to promote again cooperation in those areas, build trust. And in fact, there is also a security of information agreement that has been agreed upon to be worked out between the two countries. That again shows that here are agreements that are expected to foster greater trust between the two parties and the two businesses on the two sides and so on. So let's hope that these are taken forward even on non-market access issues.
Indeed, indeed, very much so. How would you say this FTA is different, if at all, from some of the recent FTAs that India has signed with the Europeans, such as EFTA or the UK or even New Zealand, for that matter?
Certainly, I think it is different. Firstly, of course, in terms of size, but I would also say in terms of depth of access. The FTA with UK that we signed last year uh, provided access for about 90% of the tariffs, either elimination or reduction. In this case, it goes beyond 92.7%. So there are certain items where European Union will have the first mover advantage in that sense. There are also other important areas like the rapid response mechanism. I am not aware of a similar mechanism. Certainly, there would have been provision for consultations, etc. But not in the manner it is worded here. The other aspect I noticed was certain modernization elements in terms of trade facilitation, in terms of certification of rules of origin, which have come into the agreement. Particularly, I found that they will be able to accept exporter certification of rule of origin. Normally, this has to also accompanied by a export inspection council which looks at this and then certifies, etc. That process has been done away with, and there must be an authorization of these exporter process, but still it reduces in terms of time for an exporter to go to the EIC, get the certification, etc. So it does facilitate matters to some extent. Another important aspect that I found in this FTA is that government procurement is not included.
Yes, yes, that's been kept aside.
That has been kept aside. This was in the India-UK FTA. It had a prominent part.
Yes, that's right.
And it was highlighted as such.
Absolutely.
So it's not clear what exactly went behind the scenes in respect of doing away with, at the moment at least. I do not know if there will be an enabling provision in the FTA to start negotiations on it later, because I have looked at some of the earlier agreements that EU has signed with Vietnam or other countries. Some government procurement has been an important part. The other aspect that I found interesting, to what extent it will be useful, we will have to see, but the traditional Indian medicine practitioners will be able to, with their Indian certified qualifications, be able to practice in the European. This is again a very, very significant difference, you can say. And of course, the European Union has always been a champion of sustainable development and to bring a chapter on trade and sustainable development into the FTA. Now, from the way it has been presented, it looks like it will be fairly detailed in terms of environment, labor, gender, and so on. We will have to wait and see the final provisions. But I only hope that these are all couched in a more aspirational manner rather than in a kind of binding manner. Of course, they have also said that while the dispute settlement provisions of the agreement will not be applicable, but they will have a process of consultation should either side have a concern about the implementation of this issue. So these are all certain aspects which make the India-EU FTA stand out somewhat differently from the others. And the last one, I would say, is also a new element that India has introduced in its FTA template. That is of asking making the developed country partner to make investment commitment. Now, in the India-EFTA FTA, EFTA had made a commitment of $100 billion to make investment within a 15-year period or so. Likewise, in the India-New Zealand FTA that has been signed recently, New Zealand has agreed to make a commit an investment of about 20 billion to be made by New Zealand companies in India in the next 15 years. Now, these are very significant investment commitments. But I do not find a similar figure quoted from the EU side. It is possible that EU may not have the mandate on making such investment on the behalf of the member states, because EU Commission's mandate is largely on the trade front. It is possible also that it could come up at the time when they sign the investment protection agreement. We will have to wait and see.
No, but I would say overall very positive. There is a lot that differentiates this FTA from previous FTAs, and there's a lot on the positive side. Now, this agreement, of course, has still to be legally scrubbed, after which it will be signed and thereafter ratified by both sides. Now, from your long experience, both as a trade negotiator, what might be the challenges that this process might face? For example, the EU-Mercosur agreement we hear has run into some challenges.
This is an unknown. Yes. We will have to wait and see how it secures safe passage. But if you look at the processes, what is involved is that first it has to be legally scrubbed, and then the two parties have to sign it. From India, of course, the government will sign, but from the EU side, it will be the EU Commission which will be signing the agreement. Then it goes to the EU Council, which has to give its approval. Thereafter, it has to go to the EU Parliament for ratification. So it's a kind of layered process on the part of the European Union. And you're right, the EU-Mercosur agreement is facing some resistance, particularly some of the member countries who fear possible influx of certain agricultural products in particular, and there are concerns. Beef is one item which has been mentioned. There are one or two others. The good part is these items are not present in the India-EU FTA. Both sides have, as I mentioned, carved out the sensitive products that they feel need not be exposed at this point of time. So, from that point of view, I do not visualize any major concern being expressed by any European Union country. On the other hand, I think there will be a strong urge by several European companies and lobbies to have this agreement starting to be implemented as soon as possible, because of the very significant market access that has been accorded to the European Union that they have been asking for several years now, including in such sectors like alcohol, alcoholic beverages, including in areas like automotives. There are big market access openings. So they will want to use the earliest opportunity to build up them. The other aspect, I think, that could also be compelling on them to have it implemented quickly is the signing or is the announcement by India and US of a trade deal. Now, if that comes through, as it looks like, that may be signed next month, we are told. So, that again will immediately open up the Indian market to the US businesses. So, again, I think EU would not like to be left behind. So, they would want the deal to be implemented as quickly as possible. So, I foresee...
I should imagine likewise. We would also like that.
Yes, but our ratification process is rather simple compared to the EU side. So, from the EU ratification process side, I see therefore a lot of factors that will push the process rather than make it delayed. That would be my assessment.
Well, I suppose that is in the overall interest of both sides. So that sounds quite positive also. Now, which leads me to the last question. To fully benefit from this FTA, Indian exporters and businesses will need to start preparing now by upgrading standards, compliance, and competitiveness. Against that backdrop, looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what would success look like for the FTA and this broader strategic partnership between the India and the European Union?
No. You see, ultimately, FTA is only an enabler. And you must also remember that it is going to provide a level playing field in the EU market for our exporters of textiles, garments, footwear, or chemicals, pharmaceuticals, whatever. Now, other FTA partners are already there in the market. So, you have to catch up. And for that, an EU market is also a quality conscious market. They are also advanced in terms of technology, etc. So your products will have to match those expectations.
Absolutely. Yes.
And likewise, if we are thinking in terms of significantly expanding our export profile there, then our capacities will also have to go up significantly. So I think the government has made some efforts already in this regard. Like for instance, in the budget speech, you would have seen provisions have been made for expansion of manufacturing capacities in about 7 or 8 strategic sectors.
Indeed.
And earlier also we had the PLI schemes, production linked incentive schemes, which are underway now. Semiconductors is another area in which we are going at big, likewise electronic components and so on. Now, this will have to be now given even more focus in terms of meeting those standards and those market access possibilities. So, the supply side is something that we will need to follow. And also, I mentioned to you already about the quality aspect and the standards that will have to be met. So, those again are either steel exports or textile exports or other exports. They will have to respectively see what the standards are and upgrade themselves to be able to meet those expectations. Also, I think this will hopefully invite significant levels of foreign investment, and we also need to promote the country in a manner through ease of business aspects that we can put in to be able to attract those investments and use this opportunity to see that we make best deal out of it. The last aspect is also the reverse, because EU exporters will now be coming into the Indian market in a bigger way, and there will be more competition in the automotive industry, in the engineering industry, etc. Now, our industry will also have to face up to that competition challenge. So, if they are able to get this right, get the mojo right as it were, then I think there is very significant potential for expanding trade, investment and other matters, as also supply chain, forging closer trusted supply chains with European partners in a number of areas. This can emerge as a result of not only the FTA but all the accompanying agreements that have been signed together. I think there is a promise there. Let's hope they will be able to fulfill that promise. You have asked about numbers, 5 years, 10 years. I think that's going on the speculative front. But I think if we are able to do all this, I do not see why we should not be able to at least double our trade in about 5 years, 7 years time.
Yes.
It should be possible.
So that sounds quite positive, at least double the already strong trade in the next 5 to 10 years. That's a good target. Thank you. Thank you very much. As we wrap up, if there is one thing to take away from today, it is this: the EU-India FTA is no longer just a trade negotiation. It is a strategic anchor for both partners in a fragmented world. Whether it's data, carbon, or commerce, the rules of the next decade are being written right here. Ambassador Seshadri, thank you very much for the remarkable clarity that you have brought to this very complex map. To our audience, thank you for joining us at the Delhi Policy Group. The future of this partnership, the India-EU partnership, is unfolding in real time, and now you have the inside track. We'll see you next time.